In some of our earliest nuggets in this course, we created 3 separate subsites with Acme being the top level site. And my question for you is, do you recall some of the benefits or reasons why we might create entirely separate subsites instead of just creating additional pages off of the top level site? What were some of those benefits? Do you remember? And if you're thinking things like, well, one is we could change the look and feel of a subsite and it wouldn't affect the others. And that's absolutely right. Or if you said, well, Keith, another reason is because of administration. If we want to have separate administrators for the engineering site, having it as a separate subsite would make it easier to do that. And that also is right on the money. Good job. So currently, as they sit, we told the subsites they should inherit the permissions that were granted at the top level site. So whatever groups or users have been given permissions, those same permissions at this moment are trickling down into each of those subsites. So the next logical question might be, well, if we do want engineering, for example, to have their own administrators and we don't want the inheritance from the top level site, how do we stop it? And the answer is, we just tell SharePoint that regarding this site, we want to break the inheritance. We want to stop the automatic inheritance from the parent site. So starting off on our Windows 10 machine, we'll go ahead and launch Chrome by clicking on the icon down in the taskbar. And then we'll log in as administrator into SharePoint. And for our demonstration, let's change the permission structure so that the engineering site is no longer inheriting rights from the top level site. So to do that, we're going to go to the engineering site. We can do that with the top level navigation or the quick launch over on the left. And I'd like you to notice the color scheme here with the black and the pink. If we go to the gear icon and we go to site settings, notice what site settings we're going to. The color scheme is still that of the engineering site. We are looking at the site settings for this subsite of engineering. So this is highlighted as well. And also the color scheme is another good dead giveaway that we're in the engineering subsite. So if we want this site to be autonomous, meaning we don't want to inherit permissions in the future from the top level site permissions, what we're going to do is we're going to click right here under the users and permissions. We're going to click on site permissions. So we'll click on site permissions. It's currently showing us the groups associated with this site and their respective permissions list that they have. And these are here because when we created this subsite, we checked the option to inherit the permissions from the top level site, and that's why these are here. So if we want to have this site, this engineering site, no longer inherit future permissions from the top level site, we're going to go ahead and click right here to stop inheriting permissions. Now, it should really say stop inheriting future permissions, because the permissions that are already in place are not simply going to go away because we say stop. It simply means we're going to stop inheriting future top site permission changes. So we'll go ahead and click on stop inheriting permissions, and we'll click on OK to confirm. Next, it says to us, because you're doing this Brexit-like thing with the engineering site to no longer inherit the permissions from the top level site, do you want to use the existing groups that are already present and have permissions to this subsite? Or would you like to not only keep the existing groups, but create new groups as well? So this is a little bit misleading, because even if we click on create a new group, the existing group and the existing permissions are still going to be in place. So for this demonstration, let's go ahead and for the owners of the site, let's create a new group for that. And let's also create a new group for members of the site. And we could edit the names here and call it whatever we wanted to call it. And by default, it took the person who's currently logged on, which I'm logged on as administrator, which is the system account, and it's automatically making us a member of those new groups. And that's handy because if we take a next step, which we will, and we remove some of the existing permissions, it would be nice to have still some management capability for this site. And having our account as a member of the owners group that has permissions, full control permissions to this subsite, will allow us to continue to manage and work with that subsite. So we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and we'll click on OK. Now, what's not really obvious right now is the fact that any permissions that we had originally that trickle down into the engineering site, those permissions are still there. We need to go and now revoke those existing permissions from this engineering site if we no longer want them to be present. So to do that, with the engineering site selected, we'll go to the gear icon, and from the drop down, we'll go to site settings again. And then once again, under users and permissions, we'll go down to site permissions. And what I'm going to do for this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and click this top level checkbox, which will select every single one of these groups. And I'm going to deselect the subsite owners and the subsite members for engineering. And then we're going to go ahead and click on remove user permissions, which effectively every group except for these two are going to have their permissions stripped regarding the engineering site. And unless we do this, unless we remove those permissions that those groups currently have, the same users and group, site collection wide, that had permissions a few minutes ago are still going to have permissions now unless we remove them. So having selected all the groups that we want to nix, we'll go ahead and click on remove user permissions. And I love the confirmation box. Are you sure you want to remove all permissions for the selected users and groups to this site called engineering subsite? And what we're going to do is we're going to click heck yes, click OK. And now it's cleaned up. So if we go into the engineering subsite owners group, it's showing us that group. So it's showing us that right here, that this is the group we're looking at. It's also highlighted down here. But another confusing aspect is that even though we have the look and feel of the subsite based on our black and pink color scheme, over on the left, it's still showing us all the groups. So you can kind of think of groups as being site collection wide. So even though we're focused on just the engineering site, on the left we have a list of all the groups, even though all but 2 of those groups don't have any permissions whatsoever anymore to this site. They're still listed here over on the left. And what's a little bit troubling to me is that I thought we had the administrator in there. It looked like when we created it that the administrator was there. But what I like to do now is I want to manually make sure by adding the administrator. So with that group selected, we'll go ahead and use the drop down for new and say add users. And I'm going to manually add administrator. And under show options, I'm going to remove the option for sending an email and click on share. Let's also imagine a user in Active Directory whose name is Lois, who we want also to be in charge of this engineering site. So if we want to add Lois as well, we can click on new, add users to this group, and we'll go ahead and type in Lois. Under show options, we'll not send an email, click on share, and it added Lois as well. So now either administrator or Lois has the ability to manage and work with this site, and Bob, if we logged back in as Bob and went to the engineering site, because Bob is not a member of any group whatsoever, members or nothing regarding the engineering site, Bob will not get access to that specific subsite. So let's test that. We'll go ahead and log out in the upper right hand corner. We'll use the drop down and say sign out, and we'll close the browser. We'll launch the browser again, and this time in SharePoint we'll log in as Bob, the user in SharePoint. So now we're logged on as Bob up here in the upper right hand corner. It shows us the user who's currently logged on. And so we're at the Acme top level site. If we click on HR subsite here in the top navigation, we go there. If we click on sales subsite, it takes us there. If we click on the engineering subsite, survey says, awesome. So it says file not found. If we take a look at the URL that it spit us off to, it has an access denied message in there, which is the real issue. Bob had 0 rights, and as a result, Bob cannot even view the contents. So if we hit the back button and go back to sales, or go back to HR, or go back to the top level site, all those still work no problem. So effectively, we've just annexed the engineering subsite. We modified the privileges various groups had to that subsite, and then we verified that they were being enforced by logging on as Bob to verify that Bob no longer has access to the engineering site. And now, my friend, now that we had a chance to walk through this in the video, it's your turn. Go ahead, if you're sitting at a computer and logged on to CPT Nuggets, launch the lab link over to the right and do this hands-on practice to reinforce what we've done together. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.